You listeners, do not get your hopes up in thinking that John Wick is on Haya. Because we are taking a momentary pause from Haya for just a little while so we can cover all the John Wick movies in advance of the upcoming film, John Wick 4. Yeah. So, also, we have a major complaint that we want to talk about when it comes to Haya. Zero, do you want to elaborate on this?
Sure. So I guess for people who may not know, we are subscribed to Haya. We are doing, or we are attempting to do a year-long review where we only, maybe not only, but mostly speak about releases that are on the Haya martial arts movie streaming service.
Mhm.
Now, we had that through Amazon
Yes.
accounts. You can get Haya through like Roku, through other various services, or you can just get it through Haya like .com, whatever it is. Now, one thing I started to notice is whenever I would look at Haya through Amazon on my PC, I started to realize that all the new releases that they were mentioning in their social media was not appearing on, I guess, the feed page. For example, one of the last things I saw on there was Kowloon Wall City, and that came out in December of last year. And then I started seeing things like, oh, Sidekicks is coming out, Legend of Garokaka, and then, a few other films like some Don the Dragon Wilson movies. And I kept on looking for them, and they just would not show up. Even if I did the manual search in the Amazon link, they would still not show up.
Mm-hmm.
So I was getting a little frustrated because, we want to review Haya as a streaming
Right.
service. Does that mean that because we're subscribed to Haya through our Amazon accounts, does that mean like I don't know, like we're not able to see these new releases?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't understand what was
Right.
going on.
I'm very curious if anyone is watching Haya through Amazon like we are. I mean, I selected Haya through Amazon because it makes my life a little easier, right? And like
Yeah.
you and I, watch it that way. I don't want to have another streaming service through another platform that I would have to, get access to Haya. It's like another password to, whatever. Like there's plenty of reasons. So like I think this is valuable feedback for the Haya team. Like whatever is responsible for their database not populating on other platforms, that's something that's pretty much a deal breaker. Unless they really want people to flood directly to hayatv.com, I think that's a big issue. When it comes to having their material be viewable on other services. So I think this is very valuable feedback. But weirdly enough, this came at a good time because we're gonna cover the John Wick movies, not available on Hiya, and you and I are gonna sort out this problem once we're done with the John Wick films, and then we'll unfortunately for us, we're gonna have to cancel our Hiya through Amazon in order to just get it through Hiya TV. It's not the end of the world, but it's just annoying that we have to do that. You know.
Yeah, because I started to realize that our choices in films were diminishing because we were looking through some, we were knocking movies out that we felt not that wouldn't fit our format, and then I just started to notice that I was not seeing new releases. Now, I don't know whose fault it is. It could be Amazon's fault. They
Could be.
could be something in the API could be preventing it from showing up. Could be Haya's fault. Don't know. It could be our negligence our negligence where we have some sort of setting that is preventing us from seeing new releases from these add-ons, right?
Yeah, sure.
Hard to tell, but through my searching, I couldn't figure out
Yeah,
why it wasn't showing up. I don't know if I had some sort of filter on that was preventing
yeah.
it, but yeah, very very annoying, especially because I kept on seeing Haya advertising and doing social media for new releases that I was thinking we could highlight on episodes to even just help people find out, like, hey, new releases, watch this, this is our take on it, check it out, it's on Haya. One of the few, not one of the few, like the only streaming service that
Strictly
highlights
martial arts
it,
movies.
that's supposed to be not like strictly martial arts movies, but highlighting, putting front and center martial arts movies in addition to Asian cinema.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I want to support the platform, but if the platform is not really working for us, that's a little unfortunate. So, most likely we're going to just have to kind of cancel it through Amazon, get it through Haya TV, and hopefully that sorts things.
Yeah, we'll see in a couple of weeks. We're going to do all the John Wick movies, starting with John Wick 1 today. So in a couple of weeks' time, you will know whether or not actually just going through Haya TV directly is going to resolve this issue. If not, you're going to hear more bitching from us.
And maybe we just abandon it completely and just go back to our old format. Yeah. It was convenient. It was nice to have a set list of films to choose from, as opposed to us just trying to come up with all these themes every month. That takes a lot of work. So I did like that it helped us narrow down choices.
Absolutely. The martial arts world, although there's a lot of them, Haya is supposed to highlight the best of the best. That's also a hot take. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but at least they gather them all together, and I do want to support it just like you do, for that reason. But yeah, we'll see. All right, but Haya aside, we're going to take a step back, like we said, and now we're going to talk about John Wick. John Wick 4 is going to come out in a couple weeks. When you and I watched part 3, I remember towards the end, both of us were like, no! Or at least me, because I did not think that they're going to sequel date.
Let's save our thoughts on that for the third movie.
Sure.
Because I do remember our complaints with that ending.
Yeah, but let's go back, rewind to 2014. This is Keanu Reeves starring in an action film at age 49, doing 90% of his own stunts. And it's one of the most unique films unique action films, and you can put quotation marks around the word martial arts films, that's come out in a very long time. It's so strange because people, maybe yourself included, will watch this film and, you don't think about the martial arts, right? But it really is what people say. Oh, well, the directors themselves have said it's gun fu, essentially, but it's hyper realistic gun fu, right? It's the strangest combination.
It is a definite fusion of martial arts and tactical weapons combat. It's interesting. I'm sure it's not the first to do it, but it probably is the first to do it so well that everybody copied it. This film is a milestone in martial arts movie cinema because of that. Everybody knows John Wick. Everybody knows the style. And after that, it created a new silhouette, holding the gun kind of close to the chest in this sort of tactical manner. The art of taking down your enemies with precision and in as little amount of shots needed. That's not new, I think, in the terms of actual weapons combat and how people like special forces or the Marines or Navy SEALs. My understanding is he was training at a very high level to look like he was at a very high level, and it shows.
Yeah, for sure. Keanu, I as much as I love the film, I actually think the behind-the-scenes information, there's a lot on this movie. There's no way you and I could cover all the information. I think that is equally, if not more, interesting, just because the amount of technical detail that went into this film. And even things revolving around the film rather than the film itself is so fascinating. You know, the world building. I think we've mentioned this several times in previous episodes. Like John Wick's world building is easily like the most fascinating thing about the movie. Of course, the martial arts is cool. It's great. You know, like the mood, the tone of the film. You know, the this amazing color grading. Or not amazing, but you know, it's very distinct, like a color tone that's like washed over the whole movie. It's very moody, noir, like comic booky. All that's great, but you know, this first movie, world builds, but it doesn't feel like it necessarily needs a sequel, right? It doesn't feel like it's setting up for a sequel. It's like that's it. You know,
That's what this movie does so well, and why so many other movies are just kind of aping on it. It set up a world with conversations that people were having where they already knew each other.
Mm-hmm.
The dialogue was involved in the world building, not just the you know the currency, not just the locations and the understandings. Like people will talk to each other like they already knew each other. This movie feels like the start of a new trilogy after the original trilogy ends, because they go into so much of him getting out. You know that once you know the John Wick series has run its course, they're gonna go into prequel territory. They're gonna get younger actors and they're gonna elaborate on what he was doing before John Wick, because they tease a lot of that in this movie, where it builds the mystique of the character.
Mm-hmm.
It works for this movie, but you can tell hungry producers are gonna be like, no, we got to take that. We got to elaborate on that. It's like that line in the original Star Wars where what's his name, Obi-Wan mentions the Clone Wars, right? I fought with your father in the Clone Wars. Hey, let's turn it into a whole fucking movie. You know, like they're gonna make a trilogy out of him doing the impossible task in order to be with his wife.
Right.
Like it's you can already see it. It's gonna happen.
Well, I'm crossing my fingers that doesn't. Right.
It will. You know it will. But the movie, because it sets up that backstory, it helps to elaborate on this character. Like listen to what he did in order to get out. We as the audience have an understanding, like, okay, yeah, it's a big fucking task.
Yeah.
He had to kill a lot of people, and he did. So it was not something that, should be glossed over.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give the movie praise, the series praise, but also give a little tiny bit of flack, too. I mean, the movies so far, this whole series, it never feels like, yes, like, as the series progresses, like, this first movie feels pretty quaint in comparison to, the later films. It's a little bit on the slower side. I think it's still very engaging throughout. But anyways, this first movie, when you are watching it, you are like we add a little bit of mystique to basically everything that's happening. Yes, we kind of allude to events, we kind of talk about them and such, but no, it's not like something that'll happen in the first movies. Oh, like they'll mention someone in the first movie needs to reprise himself in the third movie. It's like, no, we're just gonna add new characters and just keep building upon the world rather than like rehash a thing that we've already mentioned. Say, for example, one of the important mob boss characters, Vigo, he talks about what John Wick has done to kind of help establish the Russian mob empire, and that's it. I don't expect the movies to go make a prequel and they have to have that scene where he kills 3 guys with a pencil. Like, we don't need that. Like, the story itself is what adds, or rather, like Michael Nyqvist's performance or his little monologue is enough. I think that's plenty. Now, a little complaint of mine, not even complaint, it's just a very small nitpick, is that this first movie is it has a specific style, or rather, like, it definitely dials up the intensity, the action, the violence to a certain number, but then the subsequent movies feel more like martial arts movies, and they're still great, but actually, I feel there's a slight disconnect now because John Wick is great in the first movie as a martial art, as a fighter, as a hitman, but in the later movies, he is so good. He's actually too good. It's like, well, how did he get this good at now? Like now he's doing absurd things.
I think what the first movie is saying is, he's kind of out of tune with it a little bit. Sure. So it's not the best. I think by the second movie and then the third movie, he's been killing guys, now that he's been quote unquote reawakened. Yeah. So his skills are coming back, and it's okay for the action to elevate because not just sequel, but because his character is getting back in tune with things.
No, okay, I'll give you that. That kind of makes sense. But oh wow, we talked about this for almost 15 minutes now. What is the story? It's very simple. It's very,
very, very simple. Yes. John Wick, played by the famous Keanu Reeves, is a man grieving the loss of his wife. After her death, he receives a gift sent from her of a dog. Something for him to not be alone in his grieving process. Right. Now, during the course of the intro of the movie, we're introduced to some Russian mobsters. What's his name? Alfie?
Alfie Alfonso? Yeah.
Alfie Allen.
So,
plays Iosef. Basically this, shit son of a Russian mobster. He eyes John Wick's car. He wants it. John Wick refuses. So at night, he goes into his home, beats him up, kills his dog, and steals his car, which pretty much is the ignition for him to just fucking explode.
So, let's talk about the dog killing. I'm gonna be forthright about this. This is the first time I actually watched the first 20 minutes of the film.
Really?
Yeah, I always skip the first 20 minutes because I'm a big dog person, and my dog is literally sleeping like 2 feet away from me right now. So I couldn't stomach it for the majority of my viewing experiences. I was like, no, we're gonna cover it. Let's actually talk about it. It's still kind of rough.
I mean, they don't dwell in anything. You don't see the guy like stomp on the head and it turns into cake. Nothing like that. It's done tastefully.
No, I wouldn't call it tastefully. But I mean, okay, so it is a creative decision by the directors. I mean, it's hard to imagine a puppy getting killed on screen. Like most audiences would just be turned off by that idea. But it does really set up, why you root for Keanu Reeves and you just want all these motherfuckers to die. So
it's not even the dog, because there's so many jokes online, memes where you killed Keanu Reeves' dog, now he's gonna kill you. Thanos killed Keanu Reeves' dog. John Wick's gonna fucking kill that. All that kind of stupid shit. That's not what it's about.
No,
I think people are over exaggerating the point. It is a man who is grieving the death of his wife, and now after receiving a gift of hope that he doesn't have to be alone, that is taken away from him. And now these Russian mobsters who killed his dog, they didn't know it, but they essentially fucked with the wrong person. Yes. He has the skills in order to deal with these assholes, and he lets loose, and that's what it is. You don't fuck with somebody grieving.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I will say though, after its many I've seen this movie several times. This is far more than the sequels. I think people could just skip the first 20 minutes. It really doesn't. I mean, about the 15 to 20 minute mark is when the first action scene happens. So maybe jump in there. But I've never didn't feel like I missed anything. Skipping that. But if you guys are true movie fans, go watch them. But if you really love dogs, you can skip the first 15 minutes.
Yeah, there's your Trigger warning,
Yeah,
for
oh
dog
god,
lovers out there.
yeah, it's so much so it's traumatized the actor who actually had to do the killing, Omer Barnea. He actually had to pick up the puppy and hug him, hug the dog afterwards. But yeah, let's talk about the action. It's unique. It's very unique. I don't know if it's the first to do this. Not gun fu, right? Because we can talk about like Equilibrium, for example, but that's like super
Very
silly,
stylized,
stylized.
hyper and over the top,
Yeah,
but it works for what that movie is
yeah,
about.
yeah, and yeah, exactly. And this movie is not like that. It's a little bit more grounded. It still feels kind of comic booky at times. I think that's the inspiration that the directors were going for. But overall, I'd say that the violence is pretty close to, I guess, like real world violence. You know, it's a lot less flashy than you expect from, let's say, like a martial arts movie that you and I would normally cover. But there is definite choreography here, and I think that's what the main draw to this film is that it's so well shot, so well edited. Everything it just makes sense. Like the details are so precise, especially when it comes down to not only just Keanu Reeves' movements, the way that he flows around environment with his gunplay and his judo or jujitsu, but also like keeping track of things like how many bullets are in each, like before he has to reload. It's like that's crazy. Like I mean, it really does make you think about it sometimes because you go back into rewatching some of those scenes. It's like, oh wow, that really was just 8 rounds. But it doesn't stop when
Right.
he needs to reload. Like the action's still going as he's reloading.
Yeah, yeah. They took all that into account because I feel they really are trying to make an accurate tactical combat situation uh, explored on screen, and that's what that character is.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's hard to say that it's not. I mean, it's not a typical martial arts movie because there's actually very little striking in the movie. All right, because you and
I
I.
mean, it's there. I mean, when we say gun fu, it really is an interesting combination because my understanding is John Wick is doing judo, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
At least in this first movie, it's a lot of
Yeah,
judo throws. Like it doesn't look like your typical, I guess like Chinese martial arts.
mm-hmm.
Not there's no wushu
No.
movements or silhouettes there. It's nothing fancy. It's meant to strike. It's meant to disarm and get your person on the ground to a point where they're maybe immobilized, and then he can go for the center mass or the headshot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The first movie I would say is primarily judo, like you said, less jujitsu. The later films cover jujitsu a little bit more. There is some groundwork in the movie, but it's really is just a substitute or not substitute. It's just like filler before the gun. Like just getting people in the right positions before you just shoot them in the face. I mean, judo does cover some ground game as well. So I'd say primarily this movie is just all about judo. Um, and it's great.
Something we haven't really covered, I guess, a majority of
Yeah.
in terms of a movie
Hmm.
having judo in it. I can't even say I recall.
Yeah. As someone
So
who
yeah,
practices judo, like I'm actually very surprised at times, like how subtle the judo techniques are in the movie. They just kind of thrown in there. Like I'd say it doesn't dwell on them because the movie it doesn't need to dwell on any particular thing that happens. It's more like, okay, we just gotta move to the next story, next action beat. They just keep moving, keep moving. But you're just like kind of reveling in it. It feels like you're in the action with them. Especially since the camera, uh, it's a miracle, but that they figured this out. That they, maybe you don't need to edit all the time. Like you're just watching everything unfold, and it's like always reminding you that it's really Keanu Reeves doing all this. And
yeah, that's true. So, one of my issues with this film, and this is not really a problem with the film, but more so a problem with me rewatching the film, Now, because I've seen the sequel and then the sequel after that, where they are constantly iterating on building and making better what they did in the original, which is this fusion of tactical weapons combat and martial arts, judo, BJJ, and then later it starts to become more of a martial arts film. So what I'm getting at is I have seen, where they are currently in terms of refining that and making it good. Now, to go backwards back in time to 2014. Is that 2014?
2014, yeah.
And see this quaint little movie and see where it started from again, because it's been a while. It's been a while since I've seen this movie. You commented on this a little bit, but it was a little slow for me. And even looking at the martial arts, I was like, I remembering it being a lot better. Now, I'm not saying it's bad, but in my mind, I had that memory of really being taken aback, because when a lot of people first saw this, it was their first time seeing this sort of tactical weapons work. And then throwing the guys on the ground and precision in him shooting them, dispatching of them so easily. Like it wasn't really done in such a nice way before. So going back, I was like, oh no, this isn't what I remember it being. It's not bad, but I guess my expectations were a little high when we're watching it. So I guess that's something to take into consideration. If I'm sure some people, they're like, what the hell are you talking about? You're crazy. But that's something I always talk about on this show. It's sometimes difficult to go backwards. I always mention it when we watch the Shaw Brothers movies, the older Shaw Brothers movies. You see how much slower it is compared to modern choreography. And that's fine, it's of the time, but for me sometimes watching things that are so fast now, to go back and see them slower, it does feel a little slow.
Yeah, at least every director or every franchise, you would hope. The aspiration is always, we want to up the ante or do better than the last film, right? But somehow the John Wick films accomplishes that. Although I'd say 2 and 3 kind of have a tie from my memory. Like I haven't seen both in a while. So, but I the first movie. Like I said, you and I are kind of on the same page, in terms of the action. The first movie's great in terms of action, but it's so much more quaint compared to the more quaint and a little bit more grounded versus the second and third movie.
Yeah, it's funny that we're using the word quaint to describe a
John Wick movie.
Yeah, it's quaint.
Yeah,
It could show your grandma.
Easily. Rated PG-13. I would say that the first movie, it still holds up in the action department, but as the second and third movie rolled out, those movies just kind of upped the ante in the action department, and also the story. The story's got really complicated.
They elaborated on the world. They added onto the world building. They kept on world building. Second movie, holy crap, they went crazy once they got more of a budget. But not just the sequels, John Wick 2 and 3. Once this came out, so it's like The Matrix, so many copycats. Oh, look at that new style, we want that, that's famous, or that looks cool, that's what everyone likes now. It's funny, the fight choreographer who came up with the style, Jonathan Eusebio. He also came up with the Bourne movie fight styles. It's funny because after that movie came out as well, everybody started copying again. So it's just that's what happens. And the next John Wick was the next one to be that milestone, to be that that shining star where everyone was like, oh, okay, this is new, this is great. Let's all just do that. And I'm not saying that all the copycats are bad, but it's just it's interesting now that the silhouette that he created, the tactical kind of shooter guy, is just in everything now. I don't feel that everybody has to be this great, amazing tactical shooter.
You know what?
Right? You can have people wildly shooting around I think it's okay. I think you can just. I think you can make it to the character.
Sure,
right?
sure. I will say though, if obviously, whenever a movie does incredibly well, like John Wick did, which surprised people, back when it first released. Obviously there's going to be imitators and movies that kind of like try to cash in and try to replicate the same thing. But I will say, I do commend like this trend. If you're gonna replicate the effort that went into John Wick, then I think that's a great thing, because Keanu Reeves is really doing a lot of it. You can't. I mean, it would be a complete waste of a movie, a production, if you were trying to emulate John Wick, but you are not actually making the performer or the actors perform their own stunts. And that's actually part of the reason why John Wick, all the movies, are so impressive to me, because it's really him doing a lot of it. And him coming in, not knowing any grappling, not knowing any tactical SWAT-esque gunplay, and suddenly like just putting so much effort into his performance and his training, and then suddenly cranking out such an awesome film. Like, if that's a rubric, that's a good thing. Like, we want to see like Charlize Theron do Atomic Blonde.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to say no. I don't want everybody to do it, but to add on to that, I want everybody to copy that work ethic.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll agree with you there. Yeah.
I think now, and especially because of 8711's influence in Hollywood now, because they're just in so much. I think everybody is starting to realize, yes, we need to get our actors training months in advance to do this stuff, because the audience is more keen to behind the scenes stuff. They're more keen to movie making techniques. Yes, they understand stunt doubles, but I think they appreciate the actor or actress more if they're really doing it. So now that Keanu has shown that he put in 4 months of training for this movie, he probably put in like years training into John Wick 4. I mean, John Wick 1, 2, 3 are probably just him, training for John Wick 4, and so on and so forth, whatever, how many sequels they knock out. But yes, I think that is a good ethic that should be perpetuated in Hollywood.
Sure. No, and that's something I really commend the John Wick movies. There's plenty to commend about these movies. This movie, at least, like setting the standard for, not all action movies, but more mature, more violent action movies. Like you can have more complicated choreography and ground it. And there's a lot to cover here. I think we can talk about some of the behind the scenes stuff. Again, there's no way we can talk about all of it. Some of the production that went into the film, and I guess we'll talk about the choreography as much as we can. It's gonna be a little bit trickier because it's not our normal, striking based martial arts film, but it is choreography.
But we have a judo and BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner,
white belt.
On the call, Mr. William Mann, so at least you can give some insight,
sure,
even if it's not from a professional level.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, I know some.
You can
I know the moves.
You can be like, I got choked out like that.
Oh, plenty of times. I never got shot in the face, but but yeah, like, oh god, I hope the dog doesn't get shot too. But I will say, I think there's plenty to talk about. I want to try my best to do this movie justice, because I don't want to dismiss it and be like, it's just judo. I think there's effort that was put into the choreography, and we'll make our due diligence. So we'll talk about all that in the action segments, the Patreon segment. You can listen about that, and I guess we'll try to elaborate on the story a little bit more. But it's a super simple story.
Yeah, we basically summed it up. We don't have to go like beat by beat because it's pretty straightforward. But yes, if you want to hear us elaborate more on the action, which we definitely will break down, talk about longer, you can check us out on Patreon at Fists of Fail. And we're going to go into a lot of detail. So if you're subscribed, you can hear all of that, as well as bonus episodes. Like we just dropped Scott Adkins' Debt Collectors. He's going to be in the new John Wick movie coming out.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, there's extra other bonus episodes as well. So check us out there.
Okay. Hey guys, thanks for listening to the podcast. We're at the point where we give our recommendations, but there's a whole wealth of audio you would be listening to here if you follow us on Patreon. There you can listen to the entire episode, including an exclusive action breakdown of the fights in the movie. And now on to our final thoughts. Yeah, that's John Wick, the first one.
Hey, we made it.
We made it for the most part.
We made it through.
Yeah. Go watch it. Yeah, and the review. Go watch it.
I mean, I'm pretty sure if you're an action aficionado, or if you have some sort of fanfare towards action and or martial arts movies, you've heard of this movie. Yeah. You've heard of John Wick. Keanu Reeves is so beloved by people on the internet right now. Mm-hmm. He can do no wrong. I hope all the stories are true, and he's just generally a great guy. It's interesting that this came out as he was having a lot of box office missteps. Mm-hmm. A few of his movies before this were just not, they weren't sticking. Mm-hmm. They weren't doing too well. So I think this is what his career definitely needed, if that was really the case, if he wasn't really doing anything the public was crazy about, because boy, oh boy, did people go crazy for John Wick. Yeah, and I think not just action fans. I think generally, people know John Wick. They know him as this cool, deadly, accurate hitman.
Hitman, yes, that's more accurate.
He feeds his dog cereal. There you go.
Well, yeah. I mean, enough said. Like, John Wick has now entered the cultural icons kind of status in terms of action movies. So yeah, it's a no-brainer. Like, it's a high recommend. It really is true. Like, all the things that people say about the movie, it's so unique in the way that it does pretty much everything. Like, from the action standpoint, from the world building, from the way that the characters speak with one another, the way people are dressed, the color wash that is just prevalent throughout the whole film. It's such a unique film, and hand it to Chad Stahelski and David Leitch. Leitch. The two of them, coming from the stunt world and doing so much, you think that maybe, especially being their first directorial attempt, there might be some more missteps, but no, it really knocked it out of the park, especially trying something so new. But yeah, I can't say enough praise about the movie. I think as a martial arts fan, I actually do highly recommend this movie, not just as a you like martial arts, but if you love martial arts movies, you gotta learn to appreciate the grappling aspect of it, and it does a really good job with the grappling choreography. Plus,
I didn't realize how much grappling was in this movie until you kind of look back and see it. And maybe this would have been a good candidate for MMA when we did that theme, because it just had grappling. It's essentially mixed martial arts. Yeah. It's mixing martial arts with the tactical gun combat. Yeah.
But oh my god, yeah. I would not recommend watching the fight scenes without context. Just watch the movie. It's slower at times, but not an issue for me. I like that the movie takes its time, and it is a slight departure from the later films when it just goes a little over the top. Yeah, John Wick.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching this. It's a little slower. You keep that in your mindset that, after watching the second and third movies and seeing all the imitators and films that have been influenced by this, to go back to the original, just make sure you realize that so much stuff is just influenced by this, that it might seem slow to people. It felt a little slow to me, but upon second rewatch for talking about this conversation, I was like, okay, yeah, I can start looking at different aspects and have an appreciation for it. So yeah, obviously a recommend. I don't know if I would recommend the movie though if it was under its original title. Scorn.
Really?
I believe that was the
Oh my
original
God.
title.
That's
and
terrible.
then Keanu Reeves was just calling the movie John Wick. Like, they just in like promotion and they're just like, oh fuck it, just go with John Wick. Something along those lines.
God.
I can't remember
Can't imagine.
the details, but imagine the taglines. Like, don't mess with Scorn.
Oh, jeez.
Who you'll be
Sounds
scorned
like a
by
terrible
Scorn.
superhero.